I never believed in the Queen of Spades. In the kind of small city where apartment blocks lean on each other like tired shoulders, you don't get to choose your folklore. The stories choose you. Kids wrote her name in dust on the backs of buses. Teenagers scraped a crown and a spade into the varnish of school desks. Every bathroom mirror in my high school had the faint bloom of old breath on it where someone had whispered for her to come. We all said the same things. Say her name 3 times into a mirror at 3:33 a.m., holding a card in your mouth. Or trace a spade on the glass with your fingertip, then cut your finger and press it to the stem of the spade. Or light a black candle and set a deck beside it. Draw a blind, and if you pick the Queen of Spades, you're hers. There were a dozen variations, all of them borrowed and bent from somewhere else. We pretended not to care. But at parties, the bathroom door would open and some boy would stagger back out, white as the sink, swearing he heard a woman laughing inside his head that it was a bargain story. Everyone thought it was about love, power, getting what you want, except it was always really about debt. I was 28 when she chose me. By then, I had an office with glass walls and my own name in vinyl letters. I wrote copy you've seen and immediately forgotten. Take the trip, taste the difference, click here. Stacked in my kitchen were boxes of dumb things I'd bought late at night because an algorithm aimed at my loneliness and never missed. I liked clean lines and quiet corridors and the sense that if I kept my life flat and well lit, nothing could sneak up on me. It was February, a month that smells like coins. The power company sent a notice that if the balance wasn't paid by Friday, there'd be a fee. My landlord texted to ask if I'd received the letter about the building's planned renovations and temporary stairwell closures. The elevator had a stutter. In the lobby, the coffee machine coughed brown water into paper cups. I had a presentation due the next morning and couldn't make the numbers sing. The client wanted the illusion of inevitability, the tidal pull of course. I tried to stitch it out of metrics, but every sentence looked like it was propped up on toothpicks. Around midnight, my eyes started blurring. I rubbed them and the room swam. When I focused again, I was looking at my reflection in the window. Behind my reflection was the dark city. Within it, swallowed by the glass, my face floated like a moon. My mouth looked like it was full of shadows. I watched my reflection lower its hand from its face a few seconds after mine had. My scalp prickled. I turned off the screen, pushed back my chair, and went to the kitchen. There was an old deck of cards in the junk drawer, ribboned with receipts and scorched matchsticks. I found it under a ball of elastic bands that had gone brittle. It had been a gift from my grandfather when I was a kid. He was a man who built himself out of rules. When to stretch your legs on a bus ride, when to sleep on your right side instead of your left, when to clean your shoes. He taught me to shuffle. He taught me to find the Queen of Spades by feel. She's the only one that fights you, he told me once, laughing. She catches on the fingertip like she's got teeth. I placed the deck on the kitchen counter under the humming light. The top card was bent. The box had long since vanished. Out of curiosity more than anything, I spread the cards face down, pressing the backs with 2 fingers each, row by row, searching for a hitch, a snag. Somewhere in the middle, I felt the tiniest burr. I turned the card over. The Queen of Spades stared back. Her eyes were the exact blue of cold fluorescent light. The ink had bled just a little along one edge, soft as ash. I laughed, because that's what you do when the world notices you. It seemed like a good trick. I set her face up on the counter while I made coffee. I could feel her there the way you can feel the weight of a coin in your pocket, even though it isn't heavy enough to matter. I told myself I'd put her back and forget it when I'd finished a few more slides. At 2:57 a.m., I went to the bathroom and splashed water on my face and stood looking at myself in the mirror, slow breathing. The light above the mirror buzzed and dimmed and brightened. I said softly and sincerely, "You are fine." I'm not sure when I remembered the game. I'm not even sure exactly which rules I remembered. Probably the wrong ones. I've always been good at approximations. I dried my face, went back to the kitchen, and picked up the Queen of Spades. The card was smooth and warm in my palm. 3:33 came, and I didn't look at the clock. I didn't need to. In apartments, you can feel time by the way the pipes murmur, the way the women next door cough in their sleep, the way the third-floor radiator bangs its bone. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, holding the card against my chest. I was not drunk. I was worse. I was exhausted and a little hollow in the head. I looked at myself with the same neutral interest with which you might examine a stranger on the metro. I pressed the bottom edge of the Queen's card to my lips and tasted paper and something pesticide bitter. I whispered, "Queen of Spades," and the sound of my voice inside the ceramic room made me feel like I had a double. I didn't know if I was supposed to say it 3 times or 13 or say nothing at all. So I said it once, like a prayer carved down until only the blade was left. That a long time later, seconds or hours, the bulb above the mirror hummed itself into a higher pitch and went steady. The room smelled faintly of matches, though I hadn't lit any. My mouth felt dry, as if I'd been banking words against my tongue and they'd hardened into coins. I put the card on the edge of the sink. I looked down to breathe, and when I looked up again, the card wasn't on the sink anymore. It lay face up on the other side of the mirror, exactly where there was no ledge. I looked for seam lines in the glass. There were none. The Queen rested on nothing, her eyes spared for me alone. When I reached out, the mirror was cold and slick. My fingertips left short-lived ovals of fog. The Queen was just beyond reach, the way a pain grows distant when you try to remember it exactly. I told myself I had balanced the card on some narrow edge and it had fallen in and landed behind the mirror somehow. I told myself the stupidest things. Then the Queen lifted one corner of her mouth, not quite a smile, and tapped the border of her card with the tip of her spade. The tape on the back of my neck peeled at my skin. A thread pulled in my breath. I stepped back and the mirror returned to the mirror, and in it was only me. Tired, a little hungry, 2 slides away from done. I slept in my clothes on top of the blankets. When I woke at 7:40, the apartment had that post-ghost stillness that always feels like weather. Nothing moving in the air, all the dust captured in its own fall. I told myself I'd dreamed the card. The Queen was back on the counter, face down, where I must have put her. I showered, dressed, grabbed my laptop, and left the apartment with my mouth full of coffee and my pockets full of keys. In the hallway, I thought I heard a soft fingernail click from inside my door, like a ring tapping once on glass. The presentation went fine. It always does. There's a way to place your sentences so they land on the strong part of the floorboards. There's a way to inflect your own name. There's a learned innocence you can weld to your eyes. The client nodded and said, "This is compelling," which is the word you use when you've already decided. I made it through the day collecting the smallest possible victories to carry home. I bought bread. I bought 1 apple. I put cloud music in my ears that made a window inside my head. I didn't think about the Queen until the elevator opened and the mirror inside it showed me without my left hand. The rest of me was there and facing me properly and moving with me. But in the reflection, my left hand lagged a half-second behind, as if pulling free of a surface I couldn't see. It hung like a reluctant thing. When I flexed my fingers, the reflection flexed, slowly. I laughed and shook my head, and the doors slid shut with a sound like a soft throat clearing. By the time I got out on my floor, my reflection had recovered its obedience inside my apartment. The Queen of Spades lay on my pillow. Of course she did. Of course the world had not so much bent as rotated 1 notch. Nothing crashes. Things fall into their grooves. I stood with my back against the door and counted to 100 in the old way I used to stop panic. 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, 4, 2. My eyes watered. I told myself I would pick up the card and tear it in half. I told myself I would open the window and throw the halves out and watch them turn and fall like startled birds. I walked to the bed. The Queen's card felt cool and damp, like it had been under a glass. When I turned it over, the paper gave a little, not like wet cardboard but like skin. I dropped it. It landed face up. She looked up at me with her steady ice-lit gaze and raised her spade again. In one corner of the card, I saw a smear of gray that wasn't there before. It looked like smoke under glass. Then I saw the imprint of my own thumb on the margin, darkening as if the card were developing a photograph of me, and I slept badly. At 3 in the morning, the pipe in the bathroom thumped like a foot. I dreamed I was in a room where all the walls were mirrors and each mirror showed me a different second of myself. In the center of the room was a table covered in cards, and I was counting them even though there were too many. At the farthest mirror, 8 seconds behind me, the Queen leaned over my shoulder and whispered something I couldn't hear. When I woke, my jaw ached and there was paper taste on my tongue. Over the next week, the apartment learned me. The mirror fogged with breath I hadn't let out. The TV turned on to a static channel and the static had a rhythm in it, like footsteps in snow. The window seals began to sweat and the droplets ran slowly, stubbornly upward. The Queen's card appeared in places I knew I had not put it. Inside my shoe, folded like a knife in my jacket pocket. Under the kettle, where the heat bloomed its ink and made the Queen's face look bruised, that I took the deck, minus the Queen, and left it in the trash chute. I watched the rectangle fall like a little door closing into the shaft. When I came back inside, the Queen was sitting on the rim of my bathroom sink propped against my toothbrush. I don't think it was a joke. I don't think she has humor in any way we recognize. The rules I learned are not kind. If you play, you are marked. If you are marked, you must pay. You do not get to choose the currency. I started to find spades everywhere. A stain on the office carpet looked like a spade turned on its side. The handle of a broken umbrella lying on the sidewalk made a spade shape against a puddle. A waitress refilled my water and the ice she poured formed a spade before it melted. When I combed my hair, some of the hairs came loose and arranged themselves into the stem and leaves of a spade on the white tiles. On Thursday, I went to see my grandfather. He was 90 and lived in a home that smelled like gentle soap and boiled vegetables. He recognized me and smiled, the empty, precious smile of someone whose world is mostly rooms and windows and hands. I brought him grapes and he took one and rolled it between his thumb and index finger as if testing the weight of a trick. "Cards?" he asked after a while, his voice smoothed by time. "Do you still have the card tricks?" I asked. "Can you show me the one where you find the Queen?" He frowned as if someone had told him a joke in a language he almost understood. "Queen," he repeated. He looked over my shoulder toward the glass door and the pale winter outside. The fluorescent light made his skin look thin enough to see through. "Don't call her," he said. And for a second his eyes were as bright as they had been in the backyard years ago when he taught me to throw a ball straight. "You must not call her." "I don't," I began and stopped. He put his hand over mine. His skin was paper darkened with tea. His palm was cool and dry and trembled a little. "Debt," he said, as if he were trying to place a word and found it by following his breath. "She collects. She keeps the tally in the mirror." On the way home, every shop window seemed to bow. My reflection doubled and halved and doubled again. In the glass of the bus shelter, the Queen turned up in someone else's lipstick advertisement, her crown hiding in the red of a woman's mouth. When the bus came and I stepped inside, I felt the card in my pocket, although I had not taken it from the sink. I did not touch it. I did not throw it onto the floor. I held my hand tight against my thigh until my nails bit and counted my breaths to keep from crying. That night, I dreamed of the bathroom in my childhood house. I was standing on the bath mat while the mirror fogged with a slow, precise hand. A fingertip wrote backward on the glass from the other side, "Pay what is owed." When I reached up to wipe it away, my hand entered the cold fog instead of the warm steam, and I felt a wordless thing. Another hand take mine and turn it palm up and draw the outline of a spade with something sharp that I woke to the sound of the kettle boiling in the kitchen. I had not set it to boil. The apartment was bright with noon. My phone had died overnight, which meant my alarm had never rung, which meant I had missed a meeting I could not afford to miss. I didn't panic. Panic wastes. I went into the kitchen and turned off the kettle and took down a mug and then saw that inside the mug someone had drawn a spade with the thin gray of ashes. When I picked up the mug to wash it, the ash spade lifted like a sticker and adhered to my palm. I washed and it would not come off. It didn't mark my skin, but it didn't leave. It was not paint. It was attention. If I had had anyone to tell, I might have told them then, but I had been careful for years. I had trimmed people down to contacts and left them in my phone to dry. I had grown a garden of quiet around my life, and now I had no one to point into the mirror and say, "Do you see that too?" I went back to work and wrote lines that felt like walking on a sheet of ice that thinly separates you from the dark water. Everyone praised them. Everyone laughed in the right places. On Sunday, I bought a black candle from the occult shop that squats warmed like a cat under the bridge near the river. The woman behind the counter had rusty hair and a gold ring shaped like a snake that coiled 3 times around her finger and bit its tail. "Something to banish?" she asked lightly, as if she were recommending a tea. "A card," I said, and then, hearing myself, added, "A feeling. A dream. Candles don't change what wants you," she said, and wrapped the candle anyway. "They make edges." That night, I placed the candle in front of the bathroom mirror and lit it. I put the Queen's card in front of the flame. It didn't catch. The light made her eyes look alive and wet. I said her name once, because calling her seemed late at this point. The mirror breathed once, out, as if relieved. The flame flickered and stretched and then went thin as a hair and vanished. The dark fell like a blanket rather than a switch. In the glass, in the place where my mouth would be, a pale mouth opened. My mouth didn't move. The mouth in the mirror did. When the mouth spoke, it didn't make sound in the room. The voice arrived inside my head like a cold thought. It was not feminine or masculine. It was the tone of a note played on edges. "What do you want?" it asked. The simplest mistake of all is to answer. The second simplest is to pause. I did both. I thought wildly. New work and easier loneliness, the ability to forgive myself for wanting, a way to stop measuring the years by how many more rooms I might live in before whatever comes last. I thought, "Help me." The mouth in the mirror smiled and said, "You want to be chosen." That wasn't what I had thought, but it pierced. It pierced because it had the sound in it that comes when someone says the exact word for the pain you have been calling by almost words. Behind the mouth, behind me, a woman's silhouette stepped closer to the mirror. She wore a black dress with a long seam like a blade. The crown on her head was not metal. It was made of pointed shadows. She lifted her hand and placed the flat of her spade against the glass. In my chest, the muscle there moved as if answering. "Pay," she said. "Pay and I will choose you." "Pay with what?" I asked. "Everything you can put in your mouth," she said, and I understood the debt then, too quickly, like tasting salt and recognizing it too late in a dish you have already swallowed. I stepped backward. My heel hit the door. I fumbled for the switch and light crashed back into the room. The mirror showed me again, alone, pale, candle smoking. I was shaking. On the sink lay the Queen's card, and on the white porcelain someone had traced a crown in ash. On Monday, I stopped going to work. I emailed the right words to the right people and drew the curtains and waited for the day to stop. Didn't. I forced myself to eat bread I could chew without thinking and drink water in small sips. I slept and woke and slept, and in the pauses felt the steady, patient attention of the queen in the house of my mirrors. When I tried to leave twice, I found the hallway had stretched, flattening under the ceiling lights into a tunnel. The exit door at the end was an inch taller, then a foot, then too far. The third time I tried, I watched myself try from 3 seconds behind, slow and syruped, my arms trailing my decision. I gave up because there are some kinds of attention you survive by obeying. The queen became methodical. Behind the bathroom mirror, she rehearsed me. The way my mouth formed vowels, the way my left eyelid twitched when I was trying to remember a receipt, the way I sank down an inch when I was tired. She gathered me, and I felt myself gather toward her. There is a relief in finally having someone know you exactly, even if she is not human. It is a relief that can ruin you, because it feels like love. I tried to break the mirror. I used the heel of my shoe, a book, both hands. The mirror took my blows with a sound like breath. Small cracks spidered out and mended themselves while I watched. The queen leaned her cheek against the glass as if listening to my palms. When night returned to its thinnest hour, the queen came. There was no ceremony. The room simply altered. The mirror's depth thinned to transparency, and a smell like rain came from nowhere. My breath plumed in front of me in a little cloud. The queen stepped forward and put her palm flat against mine through the glass. It was not cold or warm, just there. I felt the exact map of her hand on mine. The small scar across the lifeline, the callus where a ring had rubbed a groove, the faint place where the skin thinned at the base of the middle finger. "Pay?" she said again. "I don't have." I began and stopped. Not out of obedience this time, but because when I spoke, I saw my breath fog the mirror, and in the fog she wrote, with the nail of her spade, one word: taste. She raised her hand and lifted the spade she carried, which was not metal but something, like the idea of metal sharpened very thin. She touched the tip of it to my lip. My mouth opened without my say-so, and she slid the spade over my tongue, slow as a ritual. I tasted salt, then iron, then something I cannot name. My hunger swelled so suddenly I felt like I'd been starving for years without knowing it. It wasn't hunger for food. It was hunger for the pinch and pull of being seen absolutely. I swallowed. Something left me when I swallowed. Something that had been trying to dissolve for years but couldn't without help. The room grew lighter by a shade. The noise in the walls dimmed as if the apartment had stepped away. I cried then without embarrassment. The queen watched me with a look that was not pity and not contempt. It was accounting. She began to feed me pieces of myself I had stored in mirrors. The memory of my mother combing my hair when I was 5. The taste of river water when I was 13 and tried to learn to swim and laugh choking. The lie I told my friend Isa in high school that she looked better without her glasses because I wanted boys to look at me instead of her. The cheap kindnesses, the expensive cruelties, every image softened or sharpened by reflective surfaces over a lifetime. Shop windows, puddles, phone screens, elevator doors, train car glass at night. And I swallowed them all because the Queen of Spades knows this. You cannot refuse yourself. By dawn, I was light. Light in the bad way. I felt thin, as if wind could make letters out of me. The queen stepped back into the mirror and lowered her spade as if returning it to the belt of shadow at her waist. "You will sleep," she said. "When you wake, the house will be rimmed in edges. Your debt is not ended." "Then what did I pay?" I asked. The question felt late and small in my mouth. "Interest," she said, and in the reflection her smile split and split again like a card blossoming into 4. I slept and woke and slept. The days had the quality of rooms on a ship, the sense that the floor moved under you slightly even in stillness. When I tried to work, the words came out smelling like old pennies. I scrubbed the bathroom mirror with scouring paste until the cotton cloth left gray smears and my fingers burned. I stopped using the bathroom. I brushed my teeth in the kitchen. The Queen's card lay sometimes on the cutting board, sometimes on the windowsill, sometimes in the fold of the towel I hung on the oven door. It always faced up. I placed a bowl over it to hide it. In the morning, the bowl was on the floor and the card sat on my pillow again. Because there are always practicalities. I called a glazier and told him the mirror was warped and needed to be replaced. He came with a square jaw and a tired gentleness and a truck full of glass. He removed the mirror with suction cups and an expert grunt. Behind it was not a wall. Behind it was a blackness so perfect I felt my eyes trying to make stars in it. The glazier stood with his hands full of mirror and said softly, "Huh," as if someone had told him the end of a joke he wished had been funnier. "There's nothing behind it," I said, unnecessarily. "There should be a cavity," he said, in the tone you use when you teach a child not to touch a stove. "For the backboard." "There is a cavity," I said. "It's just bigger than we thought." He replaced the mirror with decisive movements and did not look at me while he did. When he left, I paid him too much and stood in the bathroom looking at myself. The new mirror showed me clearer. My face looked like it had been sanded. The Queen stood far behind me, very small, at a distance that could only exist on water. She did not move. I blinked and she was nearer. That night, I put the Queen's card in my mouth the way the kids at school had said you must. I stood in the dark at 3:33 a.m. and saw the refrigerator light ghost the edges of the kitchen door. I didn't speak. I pressed the ink to my tongue and tasted cigarettes and metal and the sugar of fingerprints. The Queen waited on the other side of the new mirror, her patience a pressure in the room. When I dropped the card out of my mouth, it did not fall. It slid along the glass as if there were another gravity inside it. Her hand caught it. She laid it flat. Then she raised the spade and tapped the card 3 times. I felt each tap against the bones behind my face. "You are almost chosen," she said. "One more payment. What more do you want?" I asked. "What could be left?" She looked almost tender then, the way a stranger can look when your mistake reminds them of the time they made the same one. "The part of you that keeps receipts," she said. "The part that refuses to forgive you so you won't make the same mistake again. The part that calls itself love and is only inventory." I shook my head, not out of bravery but reflex. "If you take that," I said, "there will be nothing left to teach me. I will walk into fire thinking it is rain." The Queen tilted her head. Her crown's shadow points stretched toward the ceiling. "You called me," she said, "to stop being the person who lies to themselves about being fine. You can keep the part that cautions you and lose the part that writes your crimes in glass and makes you read them before bed. Or you can keep it and remain unchosen. I am not unkind. I am only what I am." She waited. The apartment held its breath. Across the street, a man in his own kitchen drank a glass of water and rinsed it and set it upside down on a towel and turned off his light. I understood then that the Queen doesn't take because she likes taking. She takes because the world is full of coins and the pockets are not deep enough to keep them from falling out. She just picks up what falls. "I will pay," I said. The words hurt in my throat. "But not to be chosen," I swallowed. "To be hungry for the right things. That is not how the ritual goes in the stories. In the stories, you either beg or you run." The Queen leaned a little nearer as if listening for a change in wind. Her mouth softened in a way that made me remember my mother once. For a second, in the mirror behind her, bending to pick up a towel I dropped when I was a child and didn't want to pick up. "Then you must give me the way you used to look at yourself at night," she said. "The mean eye, the one that shrinks and counts. The one that says, 'Not enough, not enough.' I thought of the nights I had stood in front of bathroom mirrors in rented rooms telling myself I was fine. The sentence had always had a question mark in it like a fishhook. I was tired of the hook. "Take it," I whispered. She lifted her spade. She touched the tip to my right eye, through the glass, and though the glass did not dissolve, the tip touched my iris and laid there like a cool coin. I felt, this is hard to describe, something slide out of my head and onto the flat of the spade, thin as the skin you skim off boiled milk. She withdrew the blade. On it lay a sheen I knew was mine. She breathed on it. It darkened and curled, and she pressed it to the face of the queen's card like a kiss. I didn't collapse. I didn't fall to my knees. I stood, and the room stood, and the world remained its old shape. But in the mirror my face looked different. I thought, I am. The sentence ended. It was small and true. There was no hook. The queen watched me a long time. In the mirror, far away, a child ran along a beach I had never been to, and the child's shadow looked briefly like a spade. The queen lowered her head. It looked almost like she bowed. "You were chosen," she said. "What does that mean?" I asked, but she was already receding. The mirror went denser. The bathroom light hummed on one note and then settled. The card lay on the sink again. The spade she had marked on it gleamed like oil. I reached for it and, without knowing why I did it until after my hands were moving, I turned the faucet on and held the card under the water. The ink didn't run. The card didn't warp. The mark she had made there, that glimmer, that curl, didn't wash away. But the water, striking the porcelain, made a sound like applause. Soft, precise, endless. I let it run until the sound turned dumb and my fingers numbed and I had to stop. After that, things changed quietly. The queen stopped appearing every night. Some nights the mirror was just a mirror. I brushed my teeth in front of it and sometimes I grinned at myself like a dog, too wide and silly, just to see the face look back without flinching. I returned to work in careful steps. I returned to the world the way you return to a house you had to leave too fast. Touching each object, letting it know I was back, that I still saw spades, of course. The world is full of their outlines. The handle of a bag, the shadow of a tree, the dried coffee stain on a napkin shaped by someone's thumb. The queen's card still moved on its own. I found it in my pocket when I hadn't put it there. I found it under my pillow. Once I found it inside a book I didn't remember opening, pressed between pages 132 and 133 like a botanical specimen. When I held it up to the light, I could see the faintest mesh in the paper, like a net tight enough to catch even breath, that I thought the debt was settled. Then the elevator stuttered. It was evening. I was holding a paper bag with bread in it and listening to a voice note from ISA, who I had written to after 12 years, like a person who had been hiding under a bed climbs out because the dust is choking them and standing is the only way to breathe. She had written back. It turned out we both had needed a friend we remembered being 17 with. The elevator light flickered. The car lurched. The music that sounded like a machine imitating flutes cut off mid-flute. The elevator stopped between floors. The doors showed a slice of concrete wall. The emergency button clicked under my finger like a toy. A voice somewhere promised help. I slid down the wall and sat on the floor and pulled the bread out of the bag and took a bite to keep my hands busy. The bread tasted like bread. I chewed and swallowed and felt in my jacket pocket for my phone and instead touched the queen's card. I took it out. The elevator's light made the queen's face look like she was underwater. In the mirrored paneling, my reflection multiplied and each me held a card. For a second, we were a deck. Then, in the mirror nearest the buttons, the queen put her finger to her mouth. "Shoo," she said without sound. "Why?" I asked. "Because you stop asking questions at your peril." "Listen," she said. At first I heard only the empty, elastic dark of the elevator shaft, the wires humming their wire hymn, the building breathing, Above, a footstep, then quieter, threaded through those sounds like a stitch. A woman's whisper coming from the seams of the elevator, from the metal, from the mirror, from everywhere I could see myself. "Don't make the same mistake I did," the whisper said. "What mistake?" I asked, aloud. "Thinking being chosen would save me from myself," the whisper said, and in the mirror the queen's mouth did not move that I swallowed. I thought of the rituals, of the stories that say if you call her and draw her and let her in, she will give you what you ask for. I had not asked for money or a face. I had asked for a hunger that didn't crush me. She had given me a knife that cut the right things. She had taken the hook. She had taken the mean eye. But she could not save me from arranging my life into edges and then hurting myself on them. "What do I do?" I asked. The elevator shuddered, coughed, and moved a foot. The light above my head steadied. In the mirror, very small, very far, I saw for a second a woman who looked like me drowning and lifting me up by the hair toward air. The queen put her palm flat on her side of the glass. "Keep paying," she said. "Pay by telling the truth out loud to someone who can speak it back to you unbroken. Pay by touching without asking for proof. Pay by forgiving yourself before you deserve it. Pay attention, which is the only currency you are issued fresh every morning." The elevator doors opened. I stepped out. I stood in the bright hall with my bread and my card and felt something shift. Not a ghost, not a bargain, just the smallest click of a new tooth in the gear that I went home and called ISA and told her the whole thing, the way you tell someone you love an embarrassing story about yourself so they can hold it and say it is only a story and not a sentence. She laughed and didn't laugh where I thought she would. She said, "I believe you." And I didn't care whether she meant believe the queen or believe me, because both were enough. I still see the queen in my mirrors sometimes. She stands just behind me, counting. Not cruel, not kind, just the one who comes when called, the one who knows the tally of all the rooms I have stood in reflecting and thinking not enough. She moves the card to where I will find it when I am about to lie to myself again. I curse her. I thank her. I learn the difference between those feelings, slowly. Last week, I took the queen's card to the river. It was raining in a thin, courteous way. The water had the color of old glass. I held the card over the railing and thought, throw it in and let the current make the ink soft and the paper peel and the queen go thin and thin until she is only a rumor. Then I thought, the river does not need my rumor. The city is full of them. I slid the card back into my pocket on the way home. A little girl in a red coat ran in front of me, and then behind me in the way children think makes them invisible. She held a plastic shovel shaped like a spade. She turned and waved it at me. "I'm a queen," she shouted, as if the street were a hall and I her court. I bowed, and she laughed and ran on. Tonight my mirrors are calmer. They hold me. Sometimes, very late, the queen touches the glass and I touch it back and tell her quietly what I am afraid of losing, and she writes with the point of her spade the name of something I owe, and some nights I pay and some nights I promise to pay tomorrow, and she nods as if to say, the interest gathers either way. That I never believed in the Queen of Spades. Now I believe in debt, and I believe in being seen, and I believe in the exquisite hunger that is the opposite of ruin. I don't say her name into the mirror anymore. I say mine. I wait. I listen. And when the card appears on my pillow, I put it under my tongue just for a minute to remind myself that there are worlds that begin where glass is. Here is the last thing. If you call her, if you must, make your mouth a clean place. Say her name once like a truth you can live with. When she asks you to pay, pay with attention, not with fear. 10 years from now, if you are lucky, she will still be there in your mirror on the nights you need to be counted. She will lift her spade and draw a small, harmless crown on the fog with her nail. You will see it. You will remember what it costs to be chosen. You will choose anyway. And this, too, will be a story you can hold up to the light without it falling apart in your hands.